Okay. A circular economy is based on the principles of designing waste and pollution, keeping products and materials in use, and regenerating natural systems. This is according to the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. Our speakers on the panel are all involved in the circular economy in significant ways in their communities. And with us, we have joining us, I'm going to give them a chance to introduce themselves and talk to you about their projects. With that, we'll kick off with, let's see, how about we invite Jerry Winata up first. Jerry is the head of foundation for Bawah Anambas Indonesia. So Jerry, why don't you give us a chance to get to know who you are and a little bit about your project.
Hi, good morning from Indonesia, or selamat pagi as we say it in Bahasa Indonesia. My name is Jerry Winata, and at the moment I'm running the Bawah Anambas Foundation out of Indonesia. Our foundation focuses our work a lot in the integrated waste management, but very specific for small island communities, especially those who are located in remote areas. Because at the moment, we feel that there's a lack of innovations and solutions for people who are living in such remote areas, and the challenges they're facing are quite different. So what we're trying to do with the foundation is we're trying to work with other partners to come up with implementable solutions and also viable solutions that can be replicated in other areas. So with that, I think we're going to talk a lot more in this panel. Thank you, Mel.
Thank you very much, Jerry. Our next speaker is Rashvin Pal Singh, and Rashvin is the Group CEO of Biji-biji Initiative and Emcee in Malaysia. Welcome, Rashvin.
Hey, Melanie. Hi, everyone. Good morning, and really happy to be here. So yeah, what we do at Biji-biji is we work on sustainability and circular solutions. So we work with products. These are products made from discarded car seat belts, as you can see. This is products that come from recycled plastic. Yep. As well as working with different types of waste. And lastly, we have an education subsidiary that looks at creating new innovative products through our makerspace.
Excellent. All right, and our last speaker is someone who's very familiar to Guam. He's made multiple visits here. His name is Matt Simpson. He's the CEO of Green Banana Paper in Kosrae. Matt, do you want to take a moment?
Afade, hello everybody. Afade. I am Matt Simpson. I'm from Connecticut and Michigan originally, and moved out to Marshall Islands in 2007, and then Kosrae in 2008. And just love the island here, love the life here, and wanted to give back to the island and create something sustainable and that will help the community. So I started using the waste banana trees and turning them into products, and it's been about 6 years of doing that. So that's what I'm here, excited to share about with you guys today.
All right, excellent. So let's go ahead and kick off with this panel. My first question to the panelists, can you describe how your business or project is circular? And to make the distinction, a traditional business involves picking the product you want to sell and then sourcing materials involved from factories, wholesalers, and et cetera. For your products, did it start with this? Did it start with the products first? Or did it start with the waste material you wanted to turn into something? I'd like to ask, let's go ahead and get going with Matt on this.
Sure. So our business definitely started with the waste material. Basically, I saw a documentary and got a tip from a friend that you could use the banana tree and find fibers inside it and people make stuff with it in the Philippines and India. And so I did the research, a couple of years of research, then a couple of years of just trying it. And eventually we became very skilled at using fiber and paper. So fiber and paper can be made into endless products. And we've done a lot of market research and trying to make useful products with a story or with a message. So we chose wallets due to their high value. They're shippable. Everybody uses one pretty much, and people attach their identity or their personality to it because they're carrying it. It's carrying their ID card even, and they use it, you know, all the time. So wallets was a great choice. Business cards is another product that naturally is also very high valued piece of paper, and we love that we get to be a part of people's lives in that way. And but it definitely started with the waste material for us, because we don't have many resources on this island on Costa Rica. Most resources are very limited, so this is kind of a rapidly renewable, sustainable, unlimited resource, one of the very few that we have, and we're using it.
All right, great. I'd like to turn it over for a moment to Rashvin. How about you? Did it start with the product you wanted to create, or did it start with the waste material you wanted to divert from the waste stream?
Thanks, Mel. I'm going to echo Matt over here. I think for us, it was also quite the, you know, we were regular urban city folk on the large island of Malaysia, and we came across the waste, abundance of urban waste that was PVC banners, plastics, and I think from the waste, and then it kind of sparked all these light bulb moments, and we were like, okay, what could we do with this? And then we went into the product ideation phase to discuss and look at what type of product would maximize this intrinsic value available within the materials or waste materials that were found. And then we got into developing the products.
All right. Now for Jerry, it was a little bit different. Jerry, will you please talk to the audience about how your foundation brought the pieces together to solve the resource issues of Bawah Anambas? I saw on your website that your foundation's involved in education, outreach, capacity building. How do you prioritize which problem is in most need of your attention?
Yeah, thank you, Mel, for that. So correct. So because we are a nonprofit foundation, so we came in from a slightly different angle, tackling the issue. It's not so much about prioritization, to be honest. It's more about looking at the bigger picture as a whole, and sort of like looking at into phases, which work that we need to do first, because I don't think one can move forward from different phases altogether. So where we are right now, we're focusing on what Matt and Rashvin has accomplished. I think that's what we aspire to be, to empower the community and the local community to be able to produce such high level and high quality products that have economic value. I'm just gonna quickly share, just to better explain where we are right now. Sorry, I'm just trying to do this. Can you see it?
Yes,
All right.
we can see it.
So the foundation is working with a private entity, a profit-making entity called Bawah Reserve, which is a sustainable resort out of Indonesia. And at the moment, we're working in 3 villages. So what we do, we basically have a program investment. So we invested in 2 villages to build a waste resorting unit, waste storage unit, and also teach them how to separate the waste. So this is the education part and also the investment part. And then with that, we are moving all the recyclable waste to one specific village where we built recycling center, where the recycling center are building or making simple products at the moment that includes eco bricks and also candles. Now, what's very important for the foundation is to closing the loop by ensuring we can use the products and bring it back to the villages, or working with the resort to be so them to absorb some of these products. So there's a direct economic incentives for the community to do this. And all this are run not by the foundation, but everything is run by the community. So the role of the foundation is basically to make sure the community are able to do this. Again, we're in a very, very early stage. We're barely 2 years old. And this is happening right now. And we're hoping that this model can be improved and also can be expanded to the rest of the islands in Indonesia.
Thank you for that answer. So now, I think the audience would appreciate knowing how much waste are we talking about here, and where would this waste be if your business products weren't around? Back to Matt.
Thanks, Mel. So we bought a fiber extractor machine in November of 2014, and that came from India. And we made our first paper in February 2015. So going on 5 years later now, with about 2 truckloads a week or 6,000 pounds of stems, that equals out to around like 1.2 million pounds of waste stems recycled. And these would otherwise be left in the jungle to rot. I don't know if everybody knows about banana trees, but they only produce fruit once, and they grow very rapidly in about 10 to 12 months. And when you harvest bananas, you cut down the stem that grew that banana tree to make room for the next stems. So these are something that an agricultural waste that is always chopped down and always wasted unless somebody is using them for fibers or mulch, and it doesn't really make great compost. So making paper or fiber yarn or anything would be the best solution for these natural fibers that we have here in the islands. And yeah, so over 1 million pounds recycled. Really proud of that.
Right. A comment from one of our audience members, I'm going to read it to you. There are indicators other than a recycling rate to identify how successful there are other indicators other than a recycling rate to identify how successful circular economy initiatives are. At a business level, adding value to resources that were not used before might be one example, such as with the banana paper. Also, designing to avoid waste creation from the very beginning and helping the consumer and incentivizing him to participate on a circular model. I'd like to talk for a moment about designing waste out from the very beginning. Maybe we can hear from Rashvin about this?
Yep. So I guess in terms of designing waste products from the very beginning, I think that goes through quite an interesting process, like any product design process. And for us, we actually tested the intrinsic values of the material quite a lot, its strength, its durability, what would it be best used for. And then, so that was the first part of the circularity. But as we all know, like even though you use waste materials, what can end up happen is that that product also has a lifespan. And in its typical 3 to 5 years or hopefully longer, it could end up in the landfill again. So what we've done beyond that is we've also created a take back model where now if you create a product and it's, over time the bag strap is not working, you are able to send it back to us. We give you a lifetime warranty of fixing your product. And we've realized one more challenge with that is about half the products are sold outside Malaysia. So that makes it quite hard to bring it back, or it defeats the purpose. So now we're looking at how we could create simple education tutorials of how you could fix your own product. So that is empowering the consumers in the design phase, in the circular economy phase.
Circular economy initiatives rely on behavior change from the perspective of consumers choosing products that are made with this in mind, how companies view waste, and how waste is minimized in design. I think you've hit on it very much. And I thank Matt for also answering the questions directed to him. Our Zoom question box is blowing up. I'm happy to see questions coming in from all over the place. Now, turning it back to Rashvin for a moment here, your products are diverse. You have the small scale plastic recycling that I saw on your website. You have waste to art installations, ethical fashion, which you spoke about a little bit earlier and we saw pictures of up on the screen. Where do you see the biggest impact from the perspective of people getting people to change their behavior, keeping the circular economy in mind and to reduce the waste that they produce?
So I guess, Mel, in all honesty, I think the part that has been most impactful in creating behavior change has probably been the art installations. So we get to work with a few different corporates over here, and we get to work with either it's their industrial construction waste or some is post-consumer waste, right? And somehow I think art has a really powerful and provocative way of getting people to think about their consumption patterns. The challenge I find sometimes with the products that we make, which are upcycled, is that people tend to think that if I buy this one product, I've done my part, right? So there is this mindset of like through consumerism, I'm actually solving the problem, which is probably not entirely accurate, right? Or it's not good practice to promote. So what I try to do quite a lot is the art part, I think really helps to shift and like be a bit provocative. The products part come in to provide you a meaningful alternative. But I think the last banner has to be education. And that is something which I think the University of Guam is doing a fantastic job. Yeah.
Jerry, can you comment on this as well with regard to behavior change and which of your many diverse projects you think have the biggest impact on changing the people in your community's behavior towards minimizing waste?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So we're working in the very remote areas. We're talking about, the closest big port that we can get to can take up to 26 hours on a boat. So, and access and logistics are very limited. With that said, the community in the Anambas region, they're quite detached with modern technology, and they're quite detached with the new way of living, which means that their way of living have not changed for generations. They've been chugging waste or trash in the ocean for generations. But back then, the food wrapper are made from banana leaves or from organic materials. But now the whole world has changed. And the people in Anambas are still trying to keep up on like how to do this because they have no idea how to do it. So the program that we do, I mean, the KPI that we have, the big objective that we have is actually trying to change their mindset and looking how to look at waste. And because they are a typical fishing community that they don't know how to do all this. So when we come in, what we're trying to do is we're trying to show them alternative and also trying to make them realize that their value in waste, they're not just garbage per se, but as Rashvin and Matt has proven that it has value and it has economic value, and it could be a really good source of alternative livelihood. And that's kind of like what we've been showing. But again, I think the key here is also a multiple partnership. Having, I think the last moderator, Ms. Jacqueline, I think alluded to the role of tourism. And in this case, because I'm working with one of our big partners and donors is actually a sustainable resort. And that has created a massive benefit and also to help to create a market immediately. So by looking at opportunities, not just the products that we can produce, but also the market that we have around the areas and how to connect them immediately, I think that has brought the biggest sort of like way of looking at this waste product, the waste management issues.
All right, very good. Now a question from the audience from Kyle Dahilig is a question for Guam, but I'd like each of the speakers, each of our panelists to answer this question. So one word answer: is our rate of transitioning towards a more circular economy too slow, on pace, or interstellar? I love that word that he put. So from the perspective of each of your communities. So let's go ahead and start with Matt, then we'll go to Rashvin and then Jerry, and then I'll answer for Guam last, of course. And everyone can say what they think. So too slow, on par, interstellar, one word. Go. Rash?
Too slow.
Okay.
Way
Jerry?
too slow.
Matt, was that Matt saying too slow?
Yeah, too slow.
Too slow. Oh, for sure, for sure. What is our best shot at achieving a regional circular economy? What is the best shot at in achieving a circular economy a little bit larger than just the community in which we're operating? So for Guam, it would be Guam and Micronesia, I would imagine, or Guam in the Pacific. And what do you guys think? What is our best? What do you think we need to do to make it to get a little further along on this?
If I would just jump in here, I think that behavior change is really key, but the challenge with that is it takes time. And I think right now we need to accelerate that. We need to like give that steroids. So I'm like really looking at policy and stricter regulation as the means of driving behavior change. And I think the other part is really technology that we need to make it more accessible. But I think because we are in a critical time, I think it calls for policy. That is the big winner over here.
Just kind of transitioning into economy, let's kick it over to Matt. So Matt, what do you think needs to happen? But I mean, just at the local level, with regard to your employees in Koshrai, do they see the significance of what you're doing from a resource conservation perspective? And does it inspire any kind of behavior change from them?
Thanks, Mel. Definitely, like the whole purpose, the main purpose for me doing what I do is to create jobs and livelihoods for people here, so they don't have to leave the island and they don't have to join the military or work at a restaurant somewhere away from their home islands. So my employees, the job is the most important part. Resource conservation out on the islands is kind of very in your face and already happening. So we're not changing our personal behavior too much, but our goal definitely is to start conversations about sustainability and ethics in the products that we make and the materials that they're made with and like the labor conditions of the people who are making them. So I think our staff are really proud that people are talking about us as a unique example of resource conservation everywhere.
You know, many companies believe that they need to sacrifice profit when they choose a more sustainable approach. And there's been a few questions in our Zoom group chat alluding to this with regard to how much does this cost or how much does that cost. Can each of you weigh in on this, on having to choose between profit over a more sustainable approach? I'd like to go ahead and point this to Rashvin.
Thanks, Mel. Yes, I noted a question from Deborah as well on this, and I'll have to speak for ourselves here just to not represent everything. I think the reality is that our products do cost a little bit more than regular products, 30 to 40% more, and this really comes down to because of the fair labor wages that we insist on putting in place. I noted what Matt was saying also with machine efficiency and tech marketing, and that I think is super important as well. I think what the question about profits is that I don't think you would have to sacrifice profits. I just think you need to recognize that you are unable to play in that mass-produced factory game, and you would have to really angle your product branding and your product demographic to a whole different spectrum. But the challenge again here is keeping it affordable, right? And that is, yeah, the big question in the room today.
Mm-hmm. Yes. What about you, Jerry?
So for these questions, I think I would need to speak on behalf of the resort itself, where I also play a bit of a advisory role. So as for the reserve, they don't see this investing or providing this funding to the foundation's work as part of their CSR, but it's part of the investment. So it's not so much about reducing profit, but it's more on securing revenue in the future. That's why the funding came from the resort to do this integrated waste management system, and also a lot of the conservation work that we do around the area. It's just part of the investment pot. And we also bring that, like Rashvin said, like making sure that's known and making sure that's part of our branding, and also getting support from the guests. So it actually, by providing this sort of like front and center, sustainability front and center for the resort as part of the investment, we also attract a different type of clientele, a different type of guests who came to the resort. And they don't see that as paying more for their stay, but they see that as being part of the sustainability journey as a whole.
Great, thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for that answer. How about you, Matt? Any thoughts on this?
Yeah, a lot. We definitely sacrifice profit for sustainability, but I think that's important. Profit's not as we all know, you can have way too much profit. That's been going on for a long time in society. And so it's today, though, it's never been cheaper or easier to start a business. You know, the cost of entry is super low. You can do it all from your computer or phone even. And I think sustainability will get cheaper and cheaper in the coming years. Machinery, small like semi-industrial machines, that's my favorite to research, like, you know, what machines can I buy and what can I make? Packaging, that's all getting more sustainable. And single-use packaging is definitely on the out, you know, and the scale of producers making sustainable materials or these things for people that want to get in the sustainability you know, business somehow is increasing, and the costs are going to go down. So I think it's a wise move for people to sacrifice profit in the short run for sustainability. Consumers are demanding sustainability more and more. And, you know, unsustainable business, mass produced stuff, it has a lot of high hidden costs on the society and on the environment. And companies should be taking social responsibility super seriously and winning the hearts of, you know, their customers through in that way, and in addition to making good products. So I think, yeah, the old ways are going and the new sustainable ways are coming, and this whole shift happening right now in the world is a great time to start something new.
Great. Excellent. I read in a journal article by Valenzuela and Bohm that governments and businesses need to come together to really drive change in moving our circular economies forward. And this is how broader global change can be accomplished. Can I get, let me see, can I get Rashvin and Jerry to weigh in on your governments? How supportive are they of your work and what you do? How about we start with Jerry?
Sure. Thank you so much for the question. So, yes, the work with the foundation, I think we work very closely with the government. So we do get massive support from the government. But we also have to realize that we're working with the local government, so not really in the national government. So at the local level, we get massive support from the government, but we're also realizing that they are out of the depth in certain things because they don't have enough resources. The area that we work in, we have 45,000 people only. That's considered tiny for Indonesia out of 270 million. So 45,000 people across 255 islands. That's a lot of ocean to cover with a very minimum resources. So realizing that, it's not that they don't want to support, but they just have very limited resources. And the foundation have a luxury that they don't. And I think this is there's a statement of questions by Hardy Tan, which is a very interesting one, saying that lots of new tech emerging these days handle solid waste management efficiently, but because it's not proven, they don't want to take a risk. That's absolutely correct. And especially for governments, they don't have the luxury that the foundation has. We have the luxury to fail. We have the luxury to learn from our failures. So what we try to tell our government counterparts is like, why don't you let us try out these crazy ideas? And then when it works, come along with this journey with us. When it works, please come and implement it. So that's kind of like how we work at the local level. And it has been working quite well so far. And so the short answer is yes, we do have the government support, but fully realizing they cannot, there are certain things that they're not allowed to do, or they're not incapable to do, or they don't have the luxury to do.
Very good, very good. Rashvin, how about you? Do you have a community and a government in your community that's very supportive of the work that you're doing?
Yes, I would probably have to echo Jerry over here. And I think it's interesting on the surface. So we do have a government that is appreciative of the fact that this needs to happen, that our waste problem is out of whack. We are recycling at about 12%, which is one of the lowest in the ASEAN region, right? But what I disagree with our current approach is that I think the government and the big companies have gone on this big approach of putting the responsibility on consumers, that, oh, it's your fault because you're not recycling, right? And I think that is a very cheeky or sneaky way to work around and absorb responsibility from the big manufacturers who are, production responsibility. For example, what we've seen over here is we've got the 10 biggest FMCG companies, right? The Coca-Colas, the Nestle's, the PepsiCos, they've come together to form a coalition called a circular economy working group, right? And instead of, it was very interesting in the beginning, and then I was following that quite a bit. But instead of looking at their manufacturing practices and take back policies, they're putting in place a series of videos of how people can recycle more, upcycle more, which I think is a bit cheeky and definitely going around the actual problem. And I think our government is not doing enough in calling a spade a spade.
Hey, excellent. Okay, we're running out of time. We have a lot of questions in our Zoom group chat, so I hope you stay behind for our virtual, what is it called? A virtual happy hour? Virtual, oh man, I much prefer happy hour. If you were to mentor someone with a passion similar to yours, so some of our audience is listening to what you're saying. I know they're getting inspired and they say, I want to take the next step. If you had to do this all over again, what would you share to somebody who has a similar passion and just wants to get going on some kind of project towards a circular economy type of project? Let's go ahead and kick off with, let's close this out with Matt first.
Thanks, Mel. I love talking to young, enthusiastic people. So I would tell them just like to follow their passion. Of course, if they're not passionate, then they're not going to want to work hard when things get tough. And to take time, you know, realize like how long things take. Things take years, and you can't be too in a rush, and you got to enjoy the process. Definitely don't go into debt. I think if it's possible to avoid debt, work as hard as you can to avoid debt. It's terrible. I think it's a really tough way to start something like this. It's not financially sustainable. And ask a lot of feedback from friends and family, and keep it simple as possible, and have fun.
Excellent. How about you, Rashvin? Can you weigh in on what you would tell, what would you tell your younger self getting going on a project similar to yours?
Yeah, I would have said start sooner, definitely the time to do it, right? You know, like there's never been a time that the level of public knowledge and appreciation for this is there. And I think Matt is spot on to say that avoid debt, right? Debt will come later. Debt will always find you, so just avoid it. But networks, guys, honestly, like I learned so much through the people I met at conferences or even virtual ones that saved me so much of time in sourcing alternative products, in design perspectives. So really be very creative with how you work with your resources. We tapped into a lot of international talent, volunteers from the UK, from the US, from Europe, who were on summer breaks for 3 months, but super top talent. So they helped with the design work. Yeah, so be very creative. You don't need a lot of money to start, but I think if you're good at leveraging off your networks, you have a really good chance to make something happen.
Excellent. And lastly, Jerry.
Well, coming in from the non-profit sort of like entity and working in this sort of integrated waste management system, it's great to have for anyone out there who's willing to sort of like join in the non-profit sector. Is a great work, is rewarding, but activism and altruism alone is not enough. You need to be entrepreneurial, learn from enterprises, learn from people who are manage to turn into profit like Rashvin and Matt, because that is so important to have the two sides together to actually help. You can actually help a lot more people on the ground and a lot of communities on the ground that needs them with your entrepreneurial sort of spirit and wit.
Thank you so much. I love that. Activism and altruism is not enough. Get your networks together, try not to go into debt, and get something off the ground, make a movement, start something amazing. I'd like to take this time to thank our panelists for their participation today. I think our audience learned a lot. They were certainly very, very engaged. Our Zoom group chat is blowing up, and I hope you stay behind for the virtual happy hour. Reception. And have a wonderful rest of conference. Thank you so much.